From NBC News, this is a special edition of Today, Decision 2024, with Savannah Guthrie and Hoda Kotb, live from Studio 1A in Rockefeller Plaza.
Hi, everybody. We're back 8 a.m. on the East Coast, 5 a.m. in the West. If you're just waking up, a long election night stretching into the morning. Oh, I have 3 cups of coffee lined up here. The race is still too close to call in some of those western battlegrounds in Michigan, but the bottom line is clear as day. Donald Trump, once again the president-elect, the 45th president set to return to the White House, and he will be the nation's 47th president.
Indeed, it was Wisconsin that put him over the threshold of 270 electoral votes. NBC News calling the race just after 5 this morning, maybe while you were asleep. Trump also, by the way, right now leading in the popular vote.
Well, we're covering every aspect of this race, as well as the fight for control of Congress at this hour. Let's get started. NBC's Garrett Haake in West Palm Beach, Florida. Garrett, good morning to you.
Hey, Savannah, good morning to you, too. And that's right, Donald Trump's victory overnight, as stunning as it was complete. Basically, having dispatched Joe Biden over the summer, he defeats Kamala Harris overnight by winning at least 2 out of the 3 blue wall states with strong Republican showings all around the country. As the results rolled in overnight, his supporters here in South Florida becoming more and more confident. First, North Carolina coming off the board, then Georgia flipping back to red after a narrow loss in 2020. But it was the call of Pennsylvania late last night, a state that both candidates spent more time and more money contesting in this race's final months, that really appeared to seal the deal for Trump. He moved over from his party at Mar-a-Lago to the event last night in West Palm Beach, speaking to more than 1,000 supporters and starting with a message of unity, but promising big things for his next administration. Listen to what he told supporters here last night.
I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president. And to every citizen, I will fight for you, for your family, and your future. Every single day I will be fighting for you, and with every breath in my body, I will not rest until we have delivered the strong, safe, and prosperous America that our children deserve and that you deserve. This will truly be the golden age of America. This was a movement like nobody's ever seen before. And frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country, and maybe beyond. Now it's going to reach a new level of importance because we're going to help our country heal. Now, winning the popular vote was very nice, I will tell you. It's a great feeling of love. We're going to be reducing taxes. We can do things that nobody else can do. Nobody else is going to be able to do it. China doesn't have what we have. Nobody has what we have. It's time to put the divisions of the past 4 years behind us. It's time to unite. And we're going to try. We have to try. We have to put our country first for at least a period of time. We have to fix it. Because together we can truly make America great again for all Americans. So I want to just tell you what a great honor this is. I want to thank you. I will not let you down. America's future will be bigger, better, bolder, richer, safer, and stronger than it has ever been before. God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you very much.
Now, this is a candidate, now president-elect, who has made a lot of promises in the course of this campaign, from policies that he will enact with Congress to things he says he can get done himself, to promises he's made on the world stage about foreign policy. That work will begin essentially now. Trump is something of a superstitious person, not especially engaged in transition planning before he had this race won. That work will begin now, the vetting and the planning of people who will be in his cabinet and who will work in his White House, already underway, but will now have Trump and his family putting their hands on it, really for the first time in a significant way. And of course, they'll be helped along by that Republican Senate going to Washington, who would have to confirm many of those picks. Savannah?
All right, Garrett. Hey, thank you very much.
NBC's Pitt Alexander is keeping tabs on the Harris campaign. The vice president canceling her planned speech at an election party last night, but she is expected to address the nation today. Hey, Peter, morning.
Hoda, good morning to you. We do expect to hear from Vice President Harris at some point over the course of this day at her alma mater, Howard University. But what a difference 24 hours makes. Monday night, I was with her in Philadelphia during that massive rally, tens of thousands in attendance, and she told the large assembled crowd there that momentum is on our side. But last night, what started as a sort of joyful, optimistic event at Howard quickly turned to a much more somber scene. There were blank stares, glum faces. At one point, they even muted the audio coming from the giant screens as they delivered more and more results indicating that she was not going to be selected as the next president of the United States, turning music on instead to buoy the spirits of those there. The bottom line is that for Vice President Harris, she was unable to perform with the numbers she needed in key demographics, particularly watching serious erosion among Latino voters. Some of those critical battleground counties, she didn't perform the way that the Democrats were hoping that she would as well. It appears clear that she carried some of the baggage, the headwinds from the Biden administration, also suffering from the same backlash that many incumbent leaders around the world have been seeing over the course of the last several years. And on the topics that really mattered to voters, her effort to cast Donald Trump as a divisive figure, to say that he was a threat to democracy, clearly didn't have the same impact as the Americans were looking for. They didn't view her as the change candidate. Ultimately, it's the topic of the economy and trying to get to sort of pre-COVID prices that delivered a lot of the votes for Donald Trump last night. Back to you guys.
All right, Peter, thank you. Let's take it to the big board. NBC national political correspondent Steve Kornacki. This is a decisive victory. We are waiting for a few of the battleground states. Donald Trump is leading in them. He may get a battleground sweep here. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, he could end up going 7 for 7. You can see what we're waiting on here is Michigan, Nevada, Arizona. You also see Alaska. Trump is leading there. It just takes a long time to get the vote in. Look, honestly, if you look at the numbers in Arizona here, 2/3 or so is in. And this is a very encouraging start for Donald Trump here. It may take him a while to count the vote. Nevada, what's in so far, when you look at the patterns here where Trump is doing particularly well around Las Vegas, Republicans haven't done as well as he's doing there, maybe in 2 decades at the national level, the last time this state went red. And in Michigan right now, we're basically just waiting on Detroit in the area around Detroit. Trump with a 100,000 vote lead, about 100,000 votes left there in Detroit. It's going to come down, but actually leapfrogging Trump there for Harris will be tough. If she doesn't, 7 for 7 looms, and potentially this could rise to 308 electoral votes.
And he may well win the popular vote when all the votes are counted. So let's talk about, there it is, the realignment. And we're seeing a political realignment. And let's go by some of these groups. Hispanic voters broke in a big way for Donald Trump. Yeah,
I mean, just take a look. Here's the exit poll, our national exit poll of Hispanic voters. We have Harris winning Hispanic voters 53 to 45. Put this in some context. 4 years ago, the exit poll had Joe Biden winning the Hispanic vote by 33 points. And we were saying that was progress for Donald Trump 4 years ago. So what you see here tonight, this is just an absolute sea change. This would be the best performance for Republicans with a Hispanic vote, maybe in half a century, depending on how this shakes out. It could be even longer than that. And it has ripple effects on this map that are felt far beyond just those battleground states.
Yeah, well, tell us about that, because this map has some surprises, and perhaps the states that we expect to be blue, New Jersey, Illinois, they look blue, but when you get under the hood, you see a very tight margin that Democrats did not see coming.
Yeah, it'd be a lighter shade of blue. Why don't we look at New York State here, a real biggie. Okay, a double-digit win here for Kamala Harris, but this was 23 points for Joe Biden for you. This has been the standard Democratic margin, a blowout in New York. Trump basically cuts it in half, but where does he cut it in half? This is tiny. Let me blow it up. This is New York City, though. This is the population capital of the country here. Yeah, I mean, just take a look. Here is the Bronx. Look at this. Okay, 45 points for Kamala Harris, heavily Hispanic borough of New York City. It was 68. Biden wins it by 68. It comes down to 45, 23-point shift there. How about Queens? You know, another big borough here in New York City, 45 points for Biden, comes down to 24. Overall in New York City, Trump has posted a 15-point gain from the last time around.
Okay, we talked a lot about the gender gap and this being the battle of the sexes election. It was young men who perhaps have never voted before who turned out in droves for Donald Trump, and that made a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could see it one place. You could layer it, too, if you talk about young Hispanic men in particular. And one place we saw that was here in Pennsylvania that Donald Trump has flipped. A lot of small, mid-sized cities. You're talking about like a Hazleton, Allentown, places with large Hispanic populations. Some of the city of Hazleton is 70% Hispanic in Pennsylvania, and Donald Trump carried it.
All right, Steve, lots to unpack. Thank you very much. Hoda, back to you.
All right. When President-elect Trump returns to the White House, he will find new support in Republican-controlled Senate after several key seats flip this election. But it could take weeks before we know which party will control the House. NBC's Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles is here. He's got a closer look at things. So the Senate's over. Now it's all about the House.
Yeah, and actually we have an update on the Senate. So we last time we talked, it was a 2-seat flip for Republicans, but now we know of a 3rd seat. And let's take a look at the entire makeup of the Senate right now to give an idea of where things stand. Republicans now have flipped 3 seats total, so they are in the driver's seat to have the majority. Let's take a look at where those wins came. First, West Virginia, Jim Justice, the governor there, he is the projected winner. That was not a surprise. We called that very early today. Then in Ohio, this was a state that Democrats were hopeful that the incumbent Sherrod Brown could outrun Bernie Moreno. That did not happen. Moreno, riding Trump's coattails, ends up winning there. And then this is the state that we're just able to call in the last hour, and that's the state of Montana, where Tim Sheehy, the former Navy SEAL, is going to beat the long-term incumbent John Tester. There are still a number of Senate seats that are still up for grabs right now. That means the margins for Republicans could get even bigger. Now, in terms of the House of Representatives, there's still a lot we don't know, and it could take time before it gets all settled. At this point, there are some 54 seats that we don't have an answer for. Right now, Republicans have a net gain of 3 seats. But that's a number that could move in either direction over the next couple of days as all these votes get counted and everything gets resolved. This is the Democrats' last hope at any sort of bastion of power in Washington right now. They've got a shot at making it happen. It's probably about 50-50 right now between Republicans and Democrats, but it could take a week, maybe longer, before we know who eventually wins.
When you look at the trend lines with the president winning so handily in places and what's happening in the Senate, do you see the House kind of following that path?
It's very possible, but the one thing to keep in mind is that the battlegrounds in the House of Representatives were not the same battlegrounds as the presidential race. So that's maybe why we see a bit of a divergence.
Okay. All right, Ryan, thank you.
Well, that sets us up nicely for our next guest, Florida Senator Marco Rubio, the Republican serving his 3rd term after winning re-election in 2022. Senator Rubio, good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. Good morning.
I know it's been a long night. Let's talk about Donald Trump last night saying he had a mandate. We've talked about the United States Senate going to the Republican Party, so we'll have new leadership there, the White House, potentially the House. What do you think the mandate is?
Well, first, I think we have to understand how he won. Not just that he won, but how he won. And he won by putting together the most diverse coalition of American voters in modern history. You were talking a moment ago before I came on the air about Hispanic voters. I think the lesson here is that the primary identity of Americans is American. And whether you're of Hispanic descent or African American, or in any background, you are the price of gas, the price of food, the fear of uncertainty and not being safe in your own community because people have entered the country illegally and happen to be criminals in their home countries before they came, and then they come here and commit crimes as well. Concerns about what's happening in the world, that every day there's new conflict that threatens to pull us in. These are things that that Donald Trump campaigned on. And his primary message was, I'm going to put the interests of Americans and America before anything else. And I think that's a message that's resonated and in a way that led to this very diverse coalition. And so, at the end of the day, I think that is part of the mandate, and that is that Americans of all backgrounds want a government in the Senate, in the White House, in the House, everywhere, that puts them and the things they care about ahead of what is important to somebody else, whether it be in politics or in another country. And, it's an important lesson to learn and take away from all this.
I mean, Donald Trump has been very, very clear about some of the things he wants to do. And so if he has a mandate, people are certainly on notice, talking about mass deportations, for example, talking about ending the war in Ukraine in 24 hours, getting a negotiated settlement that likely will mean Ukraine gives up territory. Is that the kind of thing that you expect to happen in rather short order?
Well, those are the kinds of things that I think people out there like to point to say, oh, he's going to do some terrible thing to the country. Number one,
well, he said that.
The law of the country right now, it is. Yeah, but it's the law of the country. The immigration law of this country is as follows. If you are here unlawfully, you are to be detained until removal. That's the law of the country. He's talking about enforcing our existing laws. He's also made clear that his priority is going to be dangerous criminals. People that are in this country and they're criminals in their home country or they're committing crimes here, they would be the priority for removal from this country. And that's a widespread supermajority position in this country. It's one of the reasons why he won yesterday. In the case of Ukraine, who wants war? What he's talking about is he wants the war to end. Now, as a businessman, he's not going to tell you about his negotiating tactic to bring it to a close, but I don't understand why we would not want a war like that to end. Obviously, you know, you don't have to be a fan of Vladimir Putin to want the war to end.
Yeah, I think if you're, I mean, and, you know, as you well know, many national security conservatives would say, well, you don't want that war to end if it means that you have to give up, you know, that Russia invaded your territory and you end up settling and saying, all right, you can have some of it. I mean, I think that's, you know these pressure points better than I do.
Yeah, look, I get all that, and I understand it. I think there's the reality of the war there. We can talk about it in greater detail in another interview, I imagine, but the truth of the matter is that that's what the Biden administration would admit. They don't admit it publicly, but if you ask the Biden administration, they will tell you we are funding a stalemate, okay? I think the Ukrainians have been incredibly brave and strong and standing up to Russia, but at the end of the day, what we are funding here is a stalemate war, and it needs to be brought to a conclusion because that country is going to be set back 100 years. Now, that doesn't mean that we celebrate what Vladimir Putin did or are excited about it, but I think there has to also be some common sense here, and that is that right now what we are funding is a stalemate that's costing lives and, you know, putting Ukraine, it's going to take 100 years to rebuild that poor country with everything they are facing.
Senator, can't let you go without asking the Washington question. Do you intend to serve in the Trump administration? Is that something you've talked to the former president about?
No, we haven't talked about that. We were focused on Pennsylvania. We talked a lot about Pennsylvania. We talked a lot about Nevada. We talked a lot about Wisconsin and Michigan, and not so much about Florida anymore. We're very proud. Well, listen, I'm in public service. I'm not trying to play quiet. I'm in public service. I like to serve our country. So I'm not going to be presumptuous about any of those things other than to say that I know I'm in the Senate. And if that's the role I'm going to continue to be in, it's a place that I can serve and work with this administration on things that we were already working on when he was previously president. And what happens after that, I don't know. Who knows? I mean, we're not even 12 hours removed from the outcome in this election. So, again, I mean, those are decisions they'll start working through right now.
All right, Senator Marco Rubio, I saw you at the party late last night, and you're up early with us. Appreciate your time, sir. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.